So Samara, one of the things that I've like having talked to 300 plus CISOs over the course of the 3 years, right? And it's clearly amazing to see the shift that's happening, right, in terms of being more
Hmm.
inclusive. However, there is one thread that is I wouldn't say it's omnipresent, but it seems to rear its head up every now and then, right? Which is
Hmm.
I have spent so much time and effort building my certifications and getting these qualifications and all that, and yet the world today demands less of that if you're able to, like you said, hustle, right? So how does somebody dissociate their own investment going in and saying, okay, that doesn't matter today? I mean, yes, you've done that, that's great, and it's helped you,
Hmm.
but it's not the way for the future. So how does somebody kind of separate those two?
If so, I'm making this a little bit more plain than it is, right? But if you have the certifications behind your name, fantastic. You know how to read a book. If no one knows your first and last name and doesn't look at your resume, you will not get a job. Plain and simple. What are you going to do to get your name out there to make sure that somebody's looking out for you or somebody's looking for you? Plain and simple.
Yeah.
So certifications are fantastic. I have none. I have no certifications. I had a Sec Plus. My lazy ass let it die on the vine. And now that I'm in a leadership position and I want to, ascend or, I want to continue my trajectory, yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to get a CISSP or a CISM, right? If I need it, if my network doesn't come through for me. Or my network will reach out to me and say, hey, I want you for this job. I'm going to give you 6 months to get this. And then I'm going to go to work, plain and simple.
So one final question for you, right?
Uh
And
huh.
this whole concept about the diversity of thought and diversity of people coming in, but then there's a second aspect of this which isn't as much highlighted, which is the belonging aspect, right? Which once somebody is in, is do they feel safe? Do they feel included to actually make a contribution, right? So, I mean, what shift are you seeing in the industry for people to starting to realize it's not just about getting diverse people into the organization, but also the belonging aspect?
Oh, that's such a good question. So let me touch on the diversity of thought really quick, because I feel like I didn't fully answer your question earlier, and then I'll hit the belonging. So as far as diversity of thought, I actually put that on the person more so, obviously, than any other influence that they might have in their life. What it might sound funny, but are you thinking about what you're thinking about? Are you reflecting on what's going in your mind, how you make decisions? That I self-reflect. I mean, my therapist would say arguably a little too much, right? But I know what I'm thinking. I know where my biases are. That I think that's where it starts. I think diversity of thought is how you are brought up, but I also kind of think that it can be learned too, environmental. Um, as far as belonging, gosh, that is a great question. So, um, as far as the person goes, when you are looking for a role, you people forget all the time that you are interviewing that company. They are not interviewing you, right? They
Yeah.
are, but they aren't, right? They clearly see something in you. They're interviewing you. You need to interview them and you need to make sure that it's the company that you want to work for. Now, if you're hustling, this is only your only thing on the table, you got bills to pay, then maybe figure that out a little bit later. But if you've got options, you need to interview that company and see if it's the one that you want. On the other hand, I put a lot on leaders as well to make sure that their people feel like they're belonged, that they belong, that they aren't being othered, right? Being put in this bucket or this box, and then having all kinds of stereotypes, applied to them as people. Um, I think the way that I make sure that my team feels like they belong is I always make sure that they if they have something to say, they say it. I pay attention to the mute buttons so much now when I'm on a conference call. That's the best
Wow.
way to make sure if somebody is talking and then the other person unmutes, right? The other person's not done, they go back on mute. That person had something to say for a second there, but didn't want to interrupt. I make sure I ask that person, hey, I saw you unmute. What did you want to say? So they know that they're being heard. They know that what their opinions matter, that kind of thing.
Wow, wow. Now, this is a. I mean, Samar. I mean, I think what you're talking about over here, and again, this is the diversity aspect of it, right? Which is, I mean, yes, we are on Zoom, and yes, we are remote, but what you're talking about over here is so profound, which is really the person had something to say, but he or she could not because they didn't want to interrupt the other person and went back on mute. I mean, such a powerful indicator of reaching out to that person. And I mean, that's a fantastic example. So I'm actually going to quote that when I do a screenshot of you and I talking and post that because I think this is important, right, for people to
Sure.
realize that you can do it. So
Yeah.
again, super what do you do, and again, thanks for doing what you're doing and pushing the boundaries every single day.
I will continue to do so. I appreciate you always highlighting me. You're the best.
Thanks, Samara.